What we're here today is to look at our focus of creating a new narrative. And there's a specific focus, and this is really important because it's a specific focus, creating a new narrative for real synergy between men and women everywhere in the world and across the world. And those of you who came to our session last month in November, we decided to have a slightly different format, which we're going to follow today. So I'm going to present a few ideas, but we then are going to have two sets of breakout groups. First set will be all men in one group and all women in the other group. And our specific challenge is to really gain an understanding of how we are different, as well as, of course, we're all similar as being human beings. So the idea about creating a new narrative, given not just the world we live in, because there is a lot of differences and stresses and strains, but because we believe, my team here, Angela and Philip and myself, in Corporate Heart International, that we are looking at a significantly different game to the past. So this is not the old game in which we factor women into and get men to understand us. This is a totally new game, which is created with new rules which come from men and women together. And I believe that's really very different because we all undoubtedly are wise and willing, otherwise we wouldn't have made the effort to be here today. And especially Alan Stevens, who I want you all to recognize, is now at 2 a.m. in the morning in Australia. And we have some of our friends from Malaysia and from the Philippines who are 11 p.m. at night. And we're at 7 a.m. in the morning, and England is in the middle of the afternoon. But our willingness to be there shows the wisdom, I believe, that we want to change the world together. So we're looking at, through the gender dynamics intelligence lens, as to how we can truly understand when we all say the same thing, does it actually look different depending on which body we're coming from? And that's why the first breakout will be all men and all women, separate groups. And then the second groups will be mixed. And we're going to challenge you to coming to action. We're at the end of the year. It's been a phenomenally extraordinary and crazy change year. And it's time for 2021 to step up. And our goal is that we take this, what we're discovering here on all the sessions since June, but especially the last one and this one, is how do we represent the differences out there to the world that's still arguing about many things, but also about how men and women get on with each other. So I'm going to invite Angela to help me because she's in charge of everything today, including my PowerPoint show. So I'm going to ask Angela to share a few ideas. And if we put this up, what you'll see here, my wonderful wise men and women, is these were some of the people who came last time in December. That was actually November the 14th. There you see my first error. But anyway, let's go on to the next slide. This is my vision. My vision in the next slide is that we find a new narrative that creates conversations that inspire. I call these magical conversations. So the long goal is personal power, ways to talk, ease of connectivity. But if we go to the next slide, it is about focusing in today on what I call magical conversations. So the first click, Angela, we see a circle. Now we can't be in a circle, we're on Zoom, but let's imagine we're in the circle, we're sitting around the topic. And if we click that, is about creating our future together. So if you click the screen, Angela, with no judgment, no anger, no coercion. So this is about really freeing up your soul and your mind to share how you come to the experience. Now, if we click again, Angela, on the right, we see a value cycle. This is really important for us today. Many of you know yourself well. You're on a personal development path, an emotional integrity path, a spiritual intelligence path, but really knowing ourselves as individuals and as men and women, do we really know how to love each other? Because we are different. There may be times when we say things that are misinterpreted, that we misunderstand, even when we're in that loving space. And the third arrow is about trusting us as a community, as a world. So the first arrow, know me, is personal. The second arrow is about relationships. And the third arrow is about our community. And not just our community here, but the community that we live in, whether it's the Philippines, whether it's Malaysia, whether it's Europe, whether it's UK, US, Canada, in your local communities. So if we click again, Angela, we see that the rules are we need to be honest with our emotions, share our experiences, and this is a safe space to grow. So let's click on and let's take a look at what it is about from last time. We really discovered this, and I'm grateful to Philip for giving us this. It's all about communication and miscommunication. Words, language, how do they relate to each other? What about hearing and listening? They're two different things. Honoring, appreciating. Do we really truly appreciate the difference when we say the same words? So we click again, we discover this is the word cloud. And I know many of you have seen these before. This was what came out of the last session in November. And obviously the depth of the words that are bolder mean that they were said more. So just absorb this, feel it. Women came up slightly bigger than men, even though we had men and women here on the call. Communications was a smaller word, but understanding, responsibility, conversation. And then you see some of the smaller words, which we really got into. But essentially, this is what it's all about, is doing it together. And synergy is all of these parts in equal measure. So equity maybe rather than equality. So if we click on, Angela, we see an illustration. I want to set here some ideas that men and women are different. So I don't know how many of you have been to India and have experienced this on the right. I have been in a street in Trivandrum in Kerala, and I was shocked because every car was going different ways. There were cows in the street. But interestingly, nobody hit each other. I believe this is how women work. We have this wonderful, complex and circular essence of life. Whereas maybe the picture on the left is much more regulated. It's got a very male and masculine energy to it. So we're going to look at this, and we're looking at baseline. We're not looking at the wonderful 360-degree myriad of all of us. But this is about life at work. This is the new game plan. It's not about work and life. It's about life at work. And we want synergy of both the masculine and the feminine, of the simple and the complex, and the male and the female. So our wish is to combine the two without losing the essence of either, so they don't become the same. I hope that is something that resonates with you. So if we go on to the next slide, I just want to touch into what it is in terms of looking at it in a simple operating pattern. So this is going to take us into our first breakout, because I'm splitting the male and female by biology as it informs our behavior. Now, it's not everything, but it's a core operating pattern. And for many of you, you've heard me talk about this. Some of you are new on the call today. We're going to take this map further after the first breakout. But in terms of going into the breakout, I really want to focus on what is our core operating patterns that may be different. When we're in stress and we're in conflict, these come to the fore. And males very often are either or, task focus, solutions, sequential ideas, bullet points, straight line communication. Now, obviously, there are men of different types, and some men are not exactly like this, but the operating pattern, remember, I'm talking about the underpinning of what our communication, our behavior, our words and deeds are. The female has a hormonal system, a menstrual cycle. We have a higher nurturing element, and we do multi-layered conversations, questions, tangential ideas, curved line communication. Now, when we go into the breakout, we're going to look at a particular issue. And when we come back out of the breakout, I want to introduce you to a wider 360-degree aspect of gender dynamics intelligence. But I really want to start with this because I think, as you saw with the words on the word cloud, we can agree with all of those. Yes, this is the world we want. And in fact, in our conversations, which we had last time, which is written out verbatim and will be distributed to all of you, there was a lot of talk about, we want to respect each other, we want to listen to each other, we need to be at the table together. So the men and the women all agreed. And for any of you who had time to look at the video footage on the YouTube channel, which showed the women talking and then the men talking about the same subject, you will sense a different energy that came out. So it supplied the same answers, but from a different energy source. And one of the quotes that I'm just read that came out from last time was, we are responsible for our own individualism and knowing thyself before blaming for the lack of understanding of who we are by others. So just to go to before the breakout session, Angela, just that next slide, if you could, is it possible to show the slide that's got the breakout question on? I'm making life very difficult here for Angela. So for us now, it's about not whether or not we agree we want this new game. I'm assuming we all do want a new game. We want to understand the parts that come together, the navigation, translation into this breakout group. So what I'm going to ask you to do in your two breakout groups is to discuss, for the men, just if you click it twice, Angela. So, and remember, the focus is on seeking real synergy between men and women in the workplace of the future. Remember, it's life at work. How do you as a man want to be more appreciated for the way you work with women? And then for the women, how do you as women want to be more appreciated for the way you work with men? So let me just give you some context here, is that what we're looking for is not how men think women want to be appreciated. It's looking at how do we as our own gender feel that we have a natural way of being that be helpful for women and men working together. And I want you to look at in your group, and you're going to have 10 minutes to discuss this, is what are the behaviors, what are the top 4 behaviors you feel as a group of male activities that you would like to be more appreciated and are not always appreciated? And likewise with women. Are we clear on the challenge here? Okay, so what we're going to do is we have Gerard and Curtis here. Welcome. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Hi, Gerard. Good. That's great. And Curtis, can you hear us? We're not sure, but anyway.
Loud and clear. I'm here.
Okay, great. So we're all clear. Angela's going to put us in the breakout rooms, which will be all women together in one and all men in the other. So I'm hoping that she knows which sex you are. And you will be you'll be invited. Philip will invite somebody from the men's group to report back, and Angela will from the women's group, and I will join you in the women's group.
Angela or Anita? Who will report
Yes.
from the women's, Pauline?
Yes, we were going to invite Anita, if you would report from the women's group. And Alan, we wondered if you would report from the men's group, seeing as you come in such a long way. He's flown in from Australia. So who'd like to kick off a thought on how do you think as women we could be more appreciated in the way that we can work with men that maybe we don't, and actually in real terms in behavior and words and deeds? Tammy.
To have a real respected seat at the table, not a token seat at the table, and to be taken seriously, not just, yeah, honey, thanks for your point of view, but a serious, respected seat at the table.
Okay, and as we look at this, maybe define the actual behaviors.
The behavior, well, to be taken seriously, not to just, okay, thanks for the contribution, not to be patronized, but
Okay, so let's open this up. Come on, lovely ladies. Would maybe some of our newcomers would like to share? Jill.
Hi. So with you on that. Sorry, I can't put my glasses. That Tammy.
Yeah.
Tammy, yeah. There we go. Sorry. I think sadly, it's a bit like, this sounds really patronizing, but it's a bit like children's. When you give them a huge amount of responsibility, they tend to live up to it. And I think men in an environment where you have an expectation yourself for respect, then they kind of, it comes your way. And we have to, again, this is really patronizing. I'm being very, very sexist here. I put my hands up, but they have been taught how to be men. And they have been taught that this is how it goes. And so they have been taught to sweep us to one side because actually they need to keep their space at the table. So they have to act in the way they do. Otherwise, they are less seen as less to their compatriots around the table. So if we kind of embrace the being of not acting like them, but acting that I deserve this respect, I have got some brilliant ideas, but it's the being of who we are, then that attracts them to actually, what did she say again? And we have it. So we need to speak up and speak with authority, I think.
Okay, so maybe that point is speaking with authority. Who else would like to chime in now? Just put your hand up if you do. Anita.
Yeah, I think behaviorally, what would let me know that I'm being respected when I am taken seriously, the behavior is, tell me I'm doing this wrong. The behavior for the men is that they would ask for clarification. They would do reflective kinds of listening, which means they would say what was the content of what I said, as well as the feeling. So both would be present. That would be some of the behavioral stuff that would happen.
Yes. Who else?
I think Kate had her hand up.
Kate. Kate in Manila.
Kate in London, Kate in Finchley.
Okay, we've got three Kates, sorry.
Oh, wow.
What I wanted to say, I've worked in the city for 40 years and things have come an awfully long way then, but it's all around language and leadership. And what I want to be is acknowledged for my presence and for my contribution, because that is not always done before. I've contributed a lot, never been acknowledged, and they've taken the credit. And that is always bugged. And I feel that we need to be much more inclusive, just to be acknowledged.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I like that point.
Hear, hear, sister.
So, Kate in Manila. Kate. You're on mute.
You're muted, love.
You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I'm trying to sit with the for behaviors, right? And so I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about the last time I worked with a group, which was, some time back now. But I work with a lot of women and a lot of underprivileged women. In the past, we never really took on men in it's basically a body work therapy. But for this one project, we decided to take a few of them in. And so it was very female dominant, very single mom dominant. And what I loved about it was how the attitude or the characteristics of the group would be very family oriented. Everyone would thrive or do better at work if we all knew what was going on at home. So I think if there's that sort of behavior where there's concern or
Yeah.
wanting to know of how their family life is, it makes work life that much more progressive. I don't know if that.
Yeah. So is it that because we have more interest maybe in home affairs, we want to be appreciated more overtly in the workplace for those things?
Well, I mean, I think it's we can't keep it separate.
No.
Yeah.
But,
Can't
but
keep
what,
it separate. I
Mhm.
mean, if you've got something going on at
Yeah.
home, it's just one cycle. And you know, if you look at the work environment of the past, the men would come in and all dressed up, and there's just a certain way of being, and at least that's how I grew up seeing that. But today, with women working a lot more and being single moms and having multiple children, it's you can't and by having all these women work together, they support each other. You know, if somebody needs more help with this regarding home, they'll be able to do the work if they have that support. And so everybody gets to move on with life because they're supported. So
Mhm.
yes. So we want to be, if we're looking for ways that we do things that we would like men to appreciate more, do we need to
Yeah.
explain ourselves better in terms of the
or
value?
maybe saying that we are cyclical beings, right? And I mean, it's not just about family, it's also when we get our period and we're moody.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're cyclical beings, and so maybe for them to understand that.
Yes. Alison, you want to say something? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. That I couldn't find my words, but as these ladies were speaking, it came to, and someone just said, I don't want to be, please don't put us in silos. And I'm not in the corporate world, I'm in the creative world. And the judgments that come to me, I have to fight so hard to be seen for what I have to say, for my knowledge or my compassion or my empathy. I get roadblocked so easily. And
Yeah.
I want to be heard immediately. I don't want to be judged superficially. And I know that's something women put up with so often, but it's 2020 and I want to be heard equally, immediately. And it's pretty hard. And the first woman that spoke, the patting on the head, it's the same thing. You know, when I hear, oh, wow, you're so intelligent, I'm done. I mean, the spark has been lit in anger, because you would never say that to a man. You would never say how surprised you are by their competence or their intelligence. So how do we present ourselves so that we're taken at face value when we immediately start to speak? Take us immediately for what we're saying, that our knowledge and understanding has value from the get-go. So as with 2 daughters, I would love to know how we change that dynamic immediately.
Yes. So Kate from London.
Yes, so I think as you were talking, Alison, that sort of triggered stuff for me. And I think the danger of this conversation is we can end up sort of getting into a sort of, well, it looks like this or that. So, and that said, I guess for me, it's what triggered for me was this thing of, you know, as a very masculine female, when I worked in the corporate world, it was like, oh, you're bossy, or you're trying to, you know, dominate things. Whereas a man showing the same qualities would be seen as a leader. And that seemed to be ridiculous, because that comes back to this stereotype of how we should behave as men and women. So that's one point. And my second point would be around the work that I do, as you know, Pauline, is, you know, largely often with one-to-one. And it's sort of energetic. So actually the response we get is all related to how we feel about ourselves in a certain situation and set of circumstances, whether it's all men or mixed group or all women. And so actually it comes back to the point which in a way you were making on your slides, is the more comfortable I feel about myself and my power and my authority, the more I will be heard, regardless of how other people are speaking to me or perceive me, because I won't really be bothered about that anymore.
Yeah, so yeah, and I agree, Kate. And though it's about, I put that Kate also, other Kate said, for men to be much more conscious of language and recognize the feminine form of leadership. And I put down, you know, it's about being appreciated as having different needs in life, but it's the way we explain it in a context of a mixed room or to a male boss, as opposed to the actual reality. Is how we actually share the words. So I think we're coming up to time, aren't we, Angela?
Yes, we are. We're out of time. I'm
Yeah.
going to close the room.
Are you okay reporting this back, Anita? Do you have a handle on that? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'll do the best I can, and I figure others can jump in.
Oh yeah, but that, I think we're all of a sense that, and this is my point, where it is being heard for our reality, not for what we're pretending to be.
Because I think the other point as well, Pauline, really quickly, is that in the new way, men are losing their identity, so they feel less secure, and we need to be aware of that, which is another aspect. I'm not sure how to put that in.
Well, it is. It's about being aware and really listening to the words that are coming in and not judging them and trying to create synergy. So we'll go back into the main room and
hello.
Well, hello. Curtis, we don't have you on screen. Ah, there we do. Welcome.
My day is just getting started here, so I didn't want you to see things I didn't want you to see.
Ah, yeah, always a difficult thing to arrange when you've got a background like this behind you. Yeah.
Yeah.
We should follow Knut's example of having a picture of something.
Like that.
That is always to remind myself too, you know, because it's encouraging. So it's not just background, it's encouraging.
Yeah. Sure. So 10 minutes to come up with the solution to the world's issues of what's going on between men and women.
I'm reading a question from the text, and it seems to be a little different than what was phrased on the PowerPoint.
Let's have a look.
Ellen, is it possible for you to put the question up on share a screen so we can all see it? No, I didn't snap a screenshot of it.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that. If I share my screen, I'm afraid that it's not going to appear as a chat. It might be appearing as a...
It won't let us share it anyway. Yeah, we're not hosts, so we can't share it.
Yeah, I can read it out loud if you want.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. How can you, as a man, be more appreciated in ways that you feel men can work with women to create real synergy in business? State the top 4 behaviors that you feel as a group of men are male activities and that you would like appreciated and are not always.
Well, that is quite different than what she presented, isn't it?
It was more abbreviated in the slide. How do you as a man want to be appreciated for the way you work with women? That's,
I think it's Pauline's attempt to try, she always tries to give too much. And when she does that, what she does is give more detail, which sometimes sets up an opposition in the way in which she wants the thing to work. What she's looking at is how is it that that we bring the synergy together, and one of the ways that she wants to do that is to understand how men don't feel appreciated, or the reverse. What is it we want more appreciation for in order to feel that we're better understood? So that's how she's phrasing it. So she's done it slightly differently in the chat to the PowerPoint. Yeah, she will be getting slap wrists for that. I'm her detail man. She didn't send it to me in advance. I'm the one who attempts to keep her on track because I'm the MM. So it's bullet point, sort it out, get it right, nice and focused, in boxes, nicely laid out, no tangle knit, nothing like that. So yeah,
the left side of the diagram we saw before then, eh? When she's on the right-hand side of the diagram.
Yeah. It
India.
seems to be the pathway.
She was in that road. Yeah.
It seems to be that the path to her, the answer she's looking for is how she asked the question.
From her form and her description of the differences between men and women, I think, at least for myself, it is that because I have worked with women, they are very different. So somehow I also, I question that it's so simple to distinguish women from men, because I have worked with women and I really appreciate when they work with me, when I am structured. I am working with ecosystem science, I'm working with organizational development, I'm working with new business concepts and working with all the structuring of something totally new. And when you do that, then you appreciate that women, they come up with their own perspectives, but still working focused at what you're discussing. I have been working now with women, they are totally every place. We're not discussing any longer what I wanted to discuss at least. So then I need to have a lot of patience. So I think for me, it's about this listening, what is the task? Because if we don't have any task, of course, then we can discuss a lot of things, but it's not within a framework of what we want to achieve. So maybe that is what I want, because I don't want them to be like me. On the contrary, but I really want them to have their perspectives on the same focus, what we are visioning or what we are wanting to create together.
What would you be not appreciated for that you would like to be appreciated for?
Yeah, I mean, exactly that, that this is Knut, you are so focused, you are really so structured, it makes it much easier for me to come up with my more diverse thoughts and feelings. I put them together. And I want to be appreciated for that. I do understand you, but how can we put this into a structure, a format that we both can agree on?
Yeah, so what you're saying is having it structured, being recognised for the structure that we can put in place where they are flowing all the time, for them to be able to understand how structure and that is important to us and communicating with us on that level. Is that right? How about your other guys?
I have an idea that's really what you said, Knut, really resonated with me. Years and years ago, my grandfather, sitting around a campfire together, talked about his philosophy of men and women and how they work together. And it was quite philosophical, but what he's basically, in a very short, succinct way, what he said was women are rivers and men are the shore. Men provide the guidance, the places where the waters can turn into an eddy and be calm for a little while. We can create chaos and rapids and wild waters, but we can also give women a safe place to be by that structure and the guidance that our pathways can, or our clarity of focus can provide. Otherwise, that river is just a body of water that goes nowhere. And or might just be simply a lake. But anyways, there might be something there.
If I think about the river, you can't have a flow of the river unless you have the shores setting the boundaries of where it's going, that guidance.
Right. Correct.
Otherwise, you just got water just going everywhere.
Yep, correct. So it's a flood.
Well,
Yeah.
exactly. But that is also the structure. That is the ecosystem. It's the natural ecosystem. We have some that is structured within the ecosystem. And then you have what is growing, what is living within that system. So as men, we should create the ecosystem with the right structure also for women to unfold. And that has been the trouble for the patriarchal and the hierarchical business development as well, because we have expected that women should act and think the same as we. And of course, that will cause crashes and collisions. So how to find out, how to complement each other and thinking more of the whole. And that is, by the way, the business, the business concept this time. That is the ecosystem. That is how everything is working together. Structure and form. It's always like that. The structure and the form. It is even, said that Eros in the Greek tragedies or the myth, they talk about Eros, the god of love. He sprang out of chaos, which is the feminine, and created order and beauty. So without the feminine, without all these different perspectives, it will be extremely then rigid and dogmatic if we don't have the feminine. We need a river. Otherwise it will be the dead river. Whatsoever irrigation system.
I'm sorry, I really don't agree at all with this approach. I've been reporting to women. I've been direct or have women on my team. I've seen women very structured, even more than myself, guiding me through my career path, very much mentoring me myself as a man. I think this vision of, sorry, Curtis, I don't want to insult your grandfather, but it's sort of like the backwards. Maybe it's sort of innate on our ways, on our views from before, maybe from the Bible, etc. Religion is linked to that, but I believe the new age. I mean, I've seen women carrying companies and billions of dollars under their realm and very successfully, and sadly they haven't been recognized as much, and sadly these women and I know two of those have left companies because they were not recognized within the teams, and these are layers above me because I was reporting to these ladies anyway. So yeah, and
so
I think even the way of putting ideas together were somewhat outside of my little square box, because it's so creative that wow, this is actually a new way, a new path that I don't see it as unstructured. That's what I'm trying to say. I see it as more creative, more open-minded to certain inputs.
On the question itself, how do you want to be more appreciated? Because we haven't really touched on that.
Yeah, it's true. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
We've talked about the differences, but we haven't really talked about, how would you like to, women to appreciate the things that you do?
On my side, on my mind, something that, I live in the US. I'm actually born in France. I'm actually German. My citizenship is in Germany. My parents were never married, etc. I've been sort of educated by my mom. The fact that when I start speaking to women, there's always sort of a bias around. Okay, I'm going to talk to a man, and there's sort of these principles that I'm going to have to acknowledge that he thinks I'm crazy. He thinks that I'm not, I'm not structured. I cannot think straight, etc. And I have to listen and really unbias this conversation so that it makes more sense from a two-way conversation. Otherwise, it's just I'm a man. I voted Trump. I'm an egocentric man that just thinks grabbing women by their whatever. It's it's something that you need to detach, and this detachment takes time, and it takes some level of relationship
Hi there, everybody. Are we all back?
Yes.
And for some reason, my I can't seem to take any photographs on my computer today. So if Angela, you can take some screenshots, or anybody take screenshots, you can send them to me. I think my computer is exhausted after a year of COVID. I don't know what it is. Anyway, and I'm going to use the word ladies because I'm British, but we ladies had a wonderful conversation in our group. I know sometimes women get upset by being called a lady, but I think it's nice to be ladies and gentlemen. So we'd like to hear the differences. And just as an aha, when I watched the recordings of last time, I felt very privileged to watch into a room of men talking about subject matter. As I hope any of you who have watched the recording looking in at the group of women talking it, we don't often get the opportunity to be that fly on the wall. And that's why these sessions are really important, because when we really listen, with our whole body and our heart and soul, we actually hear the subtle differences. As I said before, we all want the same thing. We all want a better world, but we see it slightly differently. So I'd like to invite the men to share first. Is that okay? It's my privilege to ask that. Is Alan doing the report back?
I think that you put on me before, so okay. We had an interesting conversation. It really got into talking about the difference between men and women, and we didn't really touch so much on what each of us really would want, how we'd like to be appreciated. We got into conversations about how I think it was Curtis came up with a great analysis there of what was it now, that the women are the river and the men are the shore, and without the two together, we've got a bit of a mess, because without the shore, we've just got a flood, and without the river itself, with just the shores, we've got a dead river. So that connection between the two, but we didn't really get so much into what it is that we would like from our partners or from the women, other than more to be recognised for the structure that we put in place.
Okay. Yes, thank you. That is in a very different focus than we had in the women's group. So really, that men are bringing that structure to us as the river, and we are flowing. Fascinating. Okay, well, I'd like to hand over to Anita, who is going to share some of what we discussed. Anita.
Yes. Well, we had a wonderful conversation, and it's just from the get-go was the expectation of behavior of getting respect. And we delved in further what that meant. That meant we spoke with authority, but it also meant that the men would reflectively listen. They'd listen to the content, the feelings, the whole person. And then we went deeper into it about acknowledging our presence and our contribution. And so that meant required behaviorally not to judge superficially, because we may present ourselves including the wholeness of life, meaning our home as well as work. We don't separate those. Also, in not judging superficially, was accepting some of the behaviors that we have that may be construed as masculine. So being decisive, but when a woman does it, it's seen as bossy. And so it, there were basically, it was not to silo, really restrain judgment and really accept fully. And that requires listening and really being present to each other. And I think the other thing that was said in a number of different ways was that assume value in whatever it is that we're saying or doing, and explore further if you don't immediately understand that. But that was part of what the women wanted in terms of feeling acknowledged and valued, was that immediately our input would be assumed as having that weight, that contribution, rather than just pushed to the side. And I'm open for others to add.
No, thank you. I think that was that was a very good review of what we were talking about. And again, I hope for you gentlemen, men, you really listened to those two dialogues were very different. I don't know whether you would agree with me, but very different. And I think it's about this point, it's really accepting that what you said, Alan, about the structure of the shore and holding the river. And our conversation was very much about, could you get in the river with us? We're actually flowing together. And I use the river as a metaphor a lot in my conversations. And I think that we're not on the river, we are the river. And Tammy's just written, women want the whole story and men want the bottom line. Maybe there's this, and although not all men are the same and not all women are the same, we're going to explore that, but there is this wonderful complementary nature of what you were saying, Alan, you know, the river and the shore, the structure, and we need that, we need the structure. But the women's conversation was all about how can you hear us better?